And we are live. I just want to say this before we really get into it. Oh, Joy's already here. Hey, how's it going?
All right. How are you guys?
Good. We were just about to start, actually, and then I saw that you hopped on, so I'm like, great, we can kick it off.
Hold on a second, guys. I'm going to turn off some stuff because you sound terrible, actually.
Okay, let's go through that fixing stuff. But in the meantime, we can discuss how Joe.
Oh, you cut out.
It looks like your mic is off. That's what I'm seeing on the screen. There you go.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, there you go. That happens sometimes. Yeah, we were discussing how Joe loves Olive Garden, and Jen is a big Taco Bell person, and that is where we are to start to kick off.
Joy is like, what's wrong with you?
So that is everyone's favorite meals. But thank you so much, Joe, Joy, and Jen for being on tonight. Hopefully we'll have a very spirited discussion, not necessarily involving Taco Bell and Olive Garden. So to kick it off, I just wanted to quickly introduce everyone that we have, and we can start off with Joe. Joe is a junior government major at the University of Texas at Austin, originally from Weatherford, Texas. He is a progressive activist who works on Austin area campaigns and serves as the president of the Texas College Democrats, the statewide collegiate arm of the Texas Democratic Party. So thank you so much for being on, Joe, Olive Garden loving. And then our next panelist is Jen Ramos. She's the daughter of the U.S.-Mexico border, born and raised in Laredo, Texas. In 2016, she was appointed as the Deputy Communications Director for the Texas Young Democrats and subsequently promoted to Communications Director the next year. As a communications professional, Jen has been featured in various publications such as NPR, Teen Vogue, The Washington Post, and The Austin Chronicle. In 2018, Jen was elected to serve as the first Latina president of the Austin Young Democrats. Jen has worked for various candidates in Texas, including Mike Collier, Kim Olson, and Delia Garza. In her career as a communications professional, Jen has fought to advocate for intersectional and culturally inclusive messaging. She currently serves as the committee woman for Senate District 21, representing 18 counties as one of the 25 members under the age of 40. Currently, Jen resides in Austin, Texas, with her Chihuahua named Roscoe, and works as a senior associate for A+G Digital, a boutique minority-owned digital communications firm. When she's not working, Jen is an award-winning karaoke champion and an amateur baker. Thank you so much for being on, Jen.
Happy to be here.
And last but not least, we have Joy. And she has so many accomplishments. So I narrowed it down to the best as I could. She is a e-commerce product manager and marketing director for internet venture startups and Fortune 50 companies. She's an honors graduate of the Culinary Arts program at Auguste Escoffier School of Culinary Arts. She's a mentor, a judge, and a member of several esteemed organizations. She has served her community in an incredible different amount of ways, and I can't thank her enough for running in 2018 and for being on tonight. So thank you so much for being on, Joy.
Well, thank you. I will confess I'm having a little trouble. You're breaking up a little bit, so I'm going to try to stay in the conversation because I'm not quite sure I can fix it, but hopefully it'll be all right.
Okay. Is it Joe and Jen? Can you guys hear me fine?
Yeah.
Okay. You can try exiting and coming back on, and we'll bring you back into the chat.
Yeah, let me restart, and you guys keep going. I'll jump right back in.
Okay, sounds good. We will see Joy in a bit. Thank you. Okay, so I guess to kick it off, how do you guys feel about this upcoming election? We have kind of waited for this moment. I like to say, like, the moment Trump was declared the winner. But how are you feeling, Joe?
How am I feeling? That is a loaded question, sir. It's a crazy time, right? We've had like 5 October surprises. From the tax bomb to the COVID bomb to everything just crashing down on all of us at once. But at the exact same time, though, I'm feeling more optimistic than ever. I saw where the Travis County Democratic Party, for example, last night called 11,000 voters, with like 50 people helping out. I'm seeing, this record-shattering turnout, especially amongst our folks, people aged between 18 and 30. Back in 2016, 226,000 voters between 18 to 30 voted in Texas. However, in 2018, it was 250,000, which was a big enough deal within itself, right, that we surpassed the 2016 presidential year number in a midterm. But as of yesterday, we are at 950,000 voters who are between the ages of 18 to 30. And that's only gone up, obviously, after today, and will continue to go up. And so a lot of these people, 66% of them were, did not vote in 2016. I'm one of them. I mean, I was 16 at the time, so I couldn't vote. But a lot of new voters, a lot of folks who, are trending Democratic, and it's going to help us down ballot and up ballot. So I'm optimistic about the state of the race in Texas. I'm optimistic about everything around the country, but I'm not too optimistic. We cannot repeat 2016. I went on a little bit of a rant today on social media because I've seen a lot of different pundits and people, trying to just relax, and people who aren't really doing anything, just offering their hot takes about elections, and especially ones that they don't work in, which really bothers me. And I mean, that kind of thing is going on, and people need to just not listen to the polls, not look at the numbers, just pedal to the metal, just keep going, pushing for 6 more days. And I mean, now 5 more days. Pretty much since tonight it's over. So, keep pushing.
Cool. Jen, same question.
So I am not a superstitious, but a mild stitious woman. And so for me, it's just, it ain't over till it's over. You either run unopposed or you run scared. And for me, it's like, this is the epitome of running scared. So as much as I feel like things are in a different position than we've ever been, and we can talk about it in a different light because people are paying attention more, it's like, I'm not paying attention to a poll. I'm not listening to political pundits on Twitter. I could care less about what they have to say because I still know that at least 5 people in my universe have not voted yet. So until I feel comfortable that we've talked to every voter that we can, until we've made sure that everyone is there and everyone is accounted for, I'm not going to rest until it's done and I can't put anybody else in line anymore. Like that's the end of it. And that's just going to be the way that I work. Just got to focus, keep that tunnel vision. And I think it's kind of like if I weren't nervous, I would be more concerned.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Joy, the question I had asked the other two while you were off was, how do you feel? And we're 6 days, I guess 5 days away until election day. So how do you feel about the upcoming election?
How do I generally feel about the election? I'm a bit like Joe. I've actually had the fortune the last week or so of being a poll observer. And I am convinced that this is going to happen because people are simply turning out. Every place that I've been, it has been a constant, steady, not just a stream of people, but every station being full, that people are intent on making sure that their voice is heard and that they're clear about that. And we need to do this in overwhelming numbers. I'm like you, Joe. I'm not looking at polls. I'm not barely looking at the numbers here in Travis County. I'm just encouraging everybody to go to the polls. What do you need to get there? And then how can we support you getting there? And what is it that you need to get out?
And then Joy, I want to keep it on you for a bit. As a former candidate in 2018, and like I said, thank you so much for running when you did. What difference are you seeing in, I guess, enthusiasm or, I know we shouldn't look at polls, but what are you seeing the major difference between 2018 in Texas, in Travis County versus what's going on right now in 2020?
I think it's a great question. I think we were really fortunate in 2018. I think I liken, my hope is that I'll liken 2018 to John the Baptist right ahead of the coming of Christ in 2020. I don't know. That might be a bit of a bit of a stretch, but that, where 2018 was the harbinger or something, where people realized that they had to participate, whether that was behind the scenes or at the polls, that there was more than just a vote, and that people understood that they needed to do more than just that. Now there is this palpable sense of, not only do I need to be a voter, I need to participate in this process, that this process is more complex than I understood, and there's different roles for a person potentially in the process. And they're doing so with a sense of clarity around, you need to hear me, that I think is there in 2020 that maybe wasn't there in 2018, if that makes sense.
No, that makes perfect sense. I think you articulated that great. Joe, as a first time voter, right? No, it's your first time voting in a presidential.
I voted in 2018.
Yeah. How has the experience been? How has it been to be able to go? Because you weren't able to, I guess, have a say in folks around your age range weren't able to have a say in what happened in 2016. How was voting for Vice President Biden, and how has this whole election been? Now that your voice is going to be heard.
You know that feeling when an Olive Garden closes or permanently?
That's a sad feeling.
Somewhere I'm smiling, right? So back in 2016, I've always really been into a lot of this into politics. I wasn't necessarily that involved when I was in high school, but I really, really supported Hillary. I was really interested in everything happening, and really wanted to make that vote. Obviously could not, and woke up feeling heartbroken, feeling like my country had let me down in a lot of ways, like so many other people felt, and I didn't get a say in what happened. And so I was just very upset, and that motivated me to get involved, to get a lot more involved, to do more things in my community, and to fight harder like it did so many others. I mean, I'll say the one silver lining of the Donald Trump presidency, at least in Texas, is that it accelerated the state going blue by 10 years, because his presidency, and you can just talk about that nationally too, there wouldn't be people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, in a non-Trump world, right? People who've shown up, right, and have taken and reclaimed their positions. They so rightfully deserve. Younger people are more energized and are out working and fighting hard. And, to vote in this election was really special, because I've been waiting for 4 years. I would have walked over broken glass through fire to cast this ballot. And it was an honor to do so, and to vote not only against him, but against people like Chip Roy, people who enabled John Cornyn, people who enabled Donald Trump and are his biggest fans and supporters. And, that we can extinguish not only him, but Trumpism in general. That was special, and I loved casting that ballot.
Cool. Jen, as someone who did vote in 2016, how was election night in 2016? As someone who, you've been so active in the Austin community and just so active in politics in general, it's really inspiring to see. But how was election night in 2016?
So 2016 for me was scary for different reasons. That was the first time I was a campaign manager, and so I was working for Delia Garza, and it was kind of being in a smaller district that's all the way at the literally very bottom of the ballot. It's always the nerves of, I hold somebody's livelihood in my hands. I hold somebody's potential, because she was the incumbent going in. And so being a first-time campaign manager freaked me out. And I remember election night being at the polls, like poll greeting, right up until 7 p.m. when they finally were like, okay, we're cutting off the line here. That's it. You're done. We can't do any more. And going home to change and get ready, because we had an election night party. And I remember that night specifically because it was cold and it was raining. It was cold, it was raining, and I wore black. For some reason, it just occurred to me to just wear black. And even then, knowing that there were still other things going on, like I remember checking the results, and Delia's came in and, she was fine. But it was still just kind of like, okay, Delia's all right, but what's going to happen next? And so just going to... At the time, it was the party with the election night party with the state party at the Driscoll, and being like, okay, come on, like what's going on, and refreshing. And every time I would refresh, I was like, it shouldn't be this close. Why is it this close at this point? And so it's kind of like, well, am I going to find out? Am I not? And being around Texas Democrats in 2016 in this big, huge ballroom, everyone is quiet. They're in their corners. Like, everyone is drinking, but for different reasons than you're used to. And it was kind of like oh crap. Like, we didn't think that Texas was going to flip, but it just what happened to everybody else. And waking up the next morning and thinking, oh, it's going to go away and I'll be fine. And it's like, no, it's not going away. This is real. This is happening. You know, you're not quite done just yet. And I don't think that feeling is ever going to go away. Like, you always want to set yourself up to never be in that position ever again. Regardless of, you know, how comfortable you get, there's always this what if in the back of your mind. And that's kind of the way I've moved forward. Because after 2016, we had the 2017 legislature, which was really hard to deal with SB4 and a bunch of other legislation. And I think that the Trump administration set us up for where we're at now, where people are really tired of business as usual. And I think that that's coming down to the Texas House. That's coming to all these seats that are going to be in play. I think everyone was just like, we're not going to give up without a fight at this point. Texas is not a lost cause. And I think that that night, November 8th, was a wake-up call for everybody. And we continue to take that experience, whether mine is similar to other people's. It's like one of those, I never want to be in this situation ever again.
Yeah, I remember the dread of that. And then I think the weirdest thing was inauguration. Because I remember the time my cousin was staying with me and waking it up, and I'm like, this isn't real. Like, this is.
I refused to watch the inauguration. I remember being at work, and it's like, y'all can watch the TVs out there. I am not going to go out there. I'm not going to see it. Like, I have never seen the inauguration.
Well, I applaud you for that.
You weren't missing much.
Yeah.
Joy, how was election night 2016 for you?
Well, I had just I remember correctly, I had just come out of the Future Leaders program with Battleground Texas earlier that year, the previous year. And in 2016, and then I spent in 2015 going into 2016. And then I had worked really hard on the platform committee that had done a major rewrite that year. And so I was pretty stoked and really focused on, even then, about what was happening in the state. And while I was an ardent supporter of Hillary and certainly went to the convention that way, which was great. I think the night of that election, and I was looking at polls then, and talking with folks, I think I turned the television off honestly at about 7:00. That I had a sense this is not going to go well, and I think that comes out that was born out of a sense of watching part of the United States and a segment of the United States population start to speak in a language of victimhood, trying to adopt a language they perceived others were using and trying to adopt it for themselves, and that they needed to be helped and defended. And once they had latched on to that campaign as a way, and so many different groups and segments had latched on to that campaign, and to this day, I don't utter those words about that administration, but that campaign they had attached themselves to it. I knew there was going to be a problem. There were groups, whether it be a supremacy need, an evangelical need, a masculine need, or whatever that was, to right something, to correct something. And like I said, I was pretty much out of that conversation by 7:00 that night. I went, this is not going to go well. And so, waking up the next morning and really having the results in front of me, like Jen said, it was, you woke up in bizarro world. It was a bad episode of a graphic novel. And you were like, wow, what world and what universe is this that has just been valid, that they feel has now been validated? And what is that going to bring now?
Yeah, it was really weird. And I remember, I think the next day there was like an SNL skit with Chris Rock and Dave Chappelle, and they talked about how like everyone in the room was basically like, oh, this is the worst thing America has ever done, and like this is like how things are affecting them. But it's like there's parts to. I think what the Trump and his administration has done is just give a voice to things that have always been there, and give a platform to like hateful groups and hateful individuals that were always there and that people of color dealt with a lot, and now everyone's kind of seeing this. I lived in Austin since 2009, but I grew up in a small town by Corpus Christi, and my hometown mosque was burned down after Trump issued his Muslim ban. I think the person who burnt it down probably always hated Muslims, but I think Trump, through his rhetoric and through his actions and through his platform, kind of uplifted this individual. And it's just not my community. I mean, it's Black community, Latinx community, they're immigrants, dreamers. You say you name it. I think Trump has just given folks this confidence that they never had before, unfortunately. And I want to stay on to you, Joy, for this next question. A lot of folks say that Texas. Well, I guess in the past they would say Texas is a red state, or people would say Texas is a non-voting state, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What in your opinion, what is Texas? Are we a red state? Are we a non-voting state? Are we a purple state? Are we a blue state? What are we?
I don't want to jump in. You guys want to start?
Yeah, let's go back to Joy. Joe, you want to get off?
The word I use to describe Texas, born and raised here, I'm fourth, fifth generation on one side of my family, and the word I use is iconoclastic. That Texans see themselves in a very specific kind of way. And being the iconoclast, sometimes you have to deal with the iconoclast differently at different times. And you have to know where the iconoclast is landing, what's important to the iconoclast at the moment, or what sets of things are priority for the iconoclast at the moment. And I think that this state is not, oddly enough, not hinged to a party, but hinged to a set of very iconoclastic ideals that sometimes land in either that going forward we can see now will land in either place. And so Texas will always be a place that I think if you want to have a two-party system or have a multi-party system, where you're going to have to fight, you're going to have to fight for it. Because Texans will always say, "Show me, prove, show me, tell me how it's gonna affect me. What does it mean for me? Maybe what does it mean for others? What's it gonna cost me?" Texans ask a lot of questions, and that's not a bad thing. Not inherently. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. And so I think going forward, not only are we a battleground state, like some, like people are now claiming, some would say we've always been a battleground state, and we have been for a very long time. I think maybe now it's just becoming really visible that this is a state that you have to fight every election, because you can't have a conversation with the iconoclast. It can just be a very long and expensive conversation. You're going to have to invest in the conversation. But it can be done. You just have to convince them and want to have the argument with it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, all your answers are so very well said. Joe, your answer to my question.
Sure. I'll answer this, kind of in the way that Joy did. I'll talk kind of from a cultural perspective, but I'll also talk politically. So politically speaking, Texas is not a red state. It's not a blue state. It is a voter suppression state. Mm-hmm. Right? We, between items such as House Bill 1888, which banned mobile polling during the primaries, forcing many counties, especially in places like the Valley, to consolidate polling locations, which hurts college students, it hurts senior citizens, all sorts of folks, all the way to the Attorney General not allowing for universal no excuse vote by mail during a pandemic, right? To Governor Abbott's, or may I say Emperor Abbott, making his decision on having only one mail-in drop-box location. Loving County of 82 people, has the exact same amount of mail-in ballot drop-off locations as Harris County, which is a population of 4.6 million. Yep. So, absolutely disgusting. There's a reason why this state has not gone blue yet, and it's because communities of color, especially and young people, have been shut out by an archaic, restrictive voting process. And I pledge to do whatever I can, along with many other badass people like the Texas Civil Rights Project, who are really doing the Lord's work every day, and people in the party who are fighting hard to change that. So that's what Texas is politically, in my mind. Culturally speaking, for better or for worse, we are a proud bunch of sumbitches, right? We are proud to be Texans. We wear this badge of pride, even when our state does really dumb things. We have really dumb leaders. We have not had good governors since 1995. So, we've done a lot of dumb things, but, if somebody from out of state comes swinging for a Whataburger or ever makes fun of Texas, we jump on it. But more importantly speaking, I think that, there's a cultural aspect of Texicana, or whatever, if you will, that is a big reason why I'm a Democrat and why I am a left-leaning person in general. And it's that, you take care of your neighbor, you don't BS people, you shoot straight, you hold people accountable who are in charge of you. You emphasize people's individual liberties. And, I think it's ironic that, the Republican Party claims to do that when, at the same time, they want to restrict what a woman does to her own body or who someone can love. And so that's a big reason of why, I believe what I believe, and it's because I'm a Texan.
Joe, I just want to say just real quick before you jump to Jimmy, I think you're totally right. And I think that's the thing that has gotten taken advantage of the iconoclast. That's the good nature of the iconoclast, right? Mm-hmm. It can easily be taken advantage of, and that's what's happened in this state.
Absolutely.
Jen, same question.
Absolutely. So I will definitely echo Joy and Joe, but I will say that Texas is a very misunderstood state. We tend to, especially, I see this a lot, because let's just be real, for those who are non-Texans who are watching this feed, if Texas were its own country, it would have a GDP that compares to several European countries. We are quite literally bigger than Russia. And so if you think about Texas and the way that it's organized, a lot of the staff that comes into Texas from out of state or across the country to come and flip Texas, whether you're from Ohio, Wisconsin, California, New Mexico, we get staff from all over the place, and they don't necessarily understand how to talk to Texans or realize that we're not all the same. Even, as myself as a Latina, I'm a Latina from the border, and I'm different. I'm a different Latina from the Valley. I'm actually from Laredo. So Laredo is different from the Valley, which is different from San Antonio, which is different from Houston. And as a result of that, and the fact that we have so many cultures under one roof, Texas is significantly misunderstood, and that's also what kind of adds to the reveal of being a Democrat and being in this idea of a big tent party. You can have devout Roman Catholics who are Texas Democrats. You can have really, really left-leaning Democrats who also believe in the Second Amendment. It's hard to understand. But if you live here, you get it. And also it comes down to trying to teach non-Texans how to say Waxahachie, Quakendall, Bexar County, and Atascosa, and all these different things. Like, if you give them a list, they won't know how to say it. Or if you give someone the name Bexar County, Texans know how to say Bear, but someone who's not from Texas will say Bexar. It's kind of like, it's you got to be here to get it. From the outside looking in, you will never understand it, but being here, and even if you're not a native Texan, if you've lived here long enough, you eventually start picking up the colloquialisms and the culture and the compassion for your neighbors. And I think that that's part of what's led us to get to this point. You have, like, for example, 538 or all these different podcasts talking about Texas, but they'll never really understand what it's like to be here until you're here. And that's kind of where we're at. So we're not a red state, we're not a blue state, and definitely agree with Joy and Joe on these points, but we're misunderstood, and you got to spend some time to really get to know us and listen to really see where people's priorities lie and how to really talk to Texans.
And I mean, to your point, Jen, I mean, if you think about even the Black Texan experience, folks who are living in my family was out of East Texas, that conversation with your family who's been 5, 6, 7 generations in East Texas, versus your Black Texas family who's been in the Panhandle since, for the last 100 years. It's not the same conversation with the Black Texan who's come to Austin as a technologist. These are all, there's no monoliths here. And as Native Texans, we get that. We move in and out of different parts and aspects and subgroups of our state very easily. I think that's really hard for people to get and speak to. It's really difficult.
Yeah, that's all very well said. I mean, Jen, just going to go off of one point you made. It's unless you're a Texan or unless you're from here, it's hard to know what it means to be a Texan or what is a Texan, right? I think that's just a great question in itself. And then, yeah, Joy. I think the group we have in this conversation, right? It's a Latina, a Black woman, a white dude, and a South Asian, right? It's like this is what Texas is, right? Like we are Texas.
Pretty much.
Going a little bit further, and Joy, I'll come to you for this question. How was the 28? We saw what we saw in 2016. I think it's fair to say 2018 was kind of the year of the woman. We saw strong, female candidates get big wins, to say the least. Whether it was AOC in New York or Judge Hidalgo in Harris County. How was 2018, Joy, for you as a candidate, and what did you see happening in Texas after 2 years of Trump?
2018 was pretty amazing. Deciding to run then, it was truly one of the great honors of my life and my professional career. As an academic, as a technologist, and then as an entrepreneur, was then now to become, a candidate for office. And again, to our point earlier, traveling around this state there's nothing I enjoy more is being all across the state. But the one of the biggest things that came out of 2018 were the women that I met, candidates, everyday Texans, folks behind the scenes. Hey, Jen, which is how I met Jen. The amount of women who, and we know this natively in Texas, who take care of the state, who take care of their families, who take care of their households, who take care of business. And they decided to run for office. The sheer number of women who ran for office in the Democratic Party in 2018 will be the stuff of legend. And we made the point to get to know each other and bond and still speak to each other well and regularly to this day. One of the things that Kim Olson and I had the fortune to do while we were together, and of course, my relationship with Kim came out of 2018. She'll be here tomorrow. Hey, Kim. Yeah, because she'll be here tomorrow. Was our Women Win group. So we created a group, and it's the smallest thing. We created a Facebook group of just candidates. And then we opened it to their women, their female staff that on their teams. And we had a get together in Fort Worth, all in the same room, on topics that were concerning because so many of us were first time candidates. And that was huge. It was from everything on how to dress, how to deal with your family, why does the media treat you differently, to physical security that a lot of people don't think about. You having your events and people would show up with guns. That happened to more than one candidate. What does it mean to have trackers? What does it mean How are you managing finances? One of the things that came out of that was concrete was that you could not previously childcare was not something that you could use against your campaign dollars. And the gosh, I'm losing my words tonight. The Ethics Commission, you couldn't actually file a campaign report having childcare as one of your expenses. And there were several women in the group. We had a conversation. Erin Wiener and a couple of others. She was, of course, expecting while she was campaigning and then had her child. That was a request they made to the Ethics Commission to get that changed. That child care was considered a legitimate expense. I mean, some of the most basic items came out of that to advance the idea that women candidates needed something, and or at least to acknowledge that there were a couple of other concerns that needed to be addressed, just even in our process of women being candidates. And so the Women Win group still exists. Candidates are still free to join. We still talk about issues and topics, answer first-time questions, resources, and things of that nature. And I know Kim still works with a ton of candidates. I still work with candidates and talk with them, try to make them comfortable in the role that they've chosen. It's a tough role to be in. You don't know what to expect, and the things that happen, you don't know what to do with sometimes, or how to even feel about some of the things that happen. And just having a phone call to be able to process the thing that happened to you is important. And then, of course, being asked eventually and joining the board of Annie's List, where I could continue to do that more formally in supporting candidates and progressive women candidates, was very huge and very important to me, and very proud of that. And for me, that was still the defining story out of 2018, and laid the groundwork for the wonderful people that you still see today. Women who are still campaigning and chose to come back again in 2020. Hey, Stephanie Phillips and Claire Barnett and Selena Vasquez, and then of course those who were successful in 2018, like the wonderful Lina Hidalgo, Retta Andrews Bowers, and Terry Mesa. These women are still great friends, but they're also our leaders and legislators too. So yeah, it's a great group of women who are still serving this state, and hopefully that becomes a generational cycle with each political season, that this group of women continue to grow and are attached to each other.
Yeah, thank you, Jen. How was 2018 for you?
So 2018 was, I feel like, a very good growing experience. In comparison to 2016, I think I went into this very much wanting to attack Ted Cruz for everything he had done up until that point. And so when I started working in 2018, again, that's how I met Joy. Joy and I have become friends because of the 2018 cycle. And also had the pleasure of meeting one of the greatest political dads of all time, Mike Collier, who was my boss that year. But I think the perspective that I got was things felt possible all of a sudden. You know, I don't think we've had an elected official who was a Democrat statewide since I was born. And Representative Barbara Jordan is just slightly before my time. You know, being born in 1982, so I'm in this weird wedge in between Joe and Joy. I've never known a government that has had Democrats in power. And, you know, you kind of grow up thinking, oh, well, it's not possible to do this, but we can try to, be the little guy and maybe get a couple fights in and maybe get some concessions. But 2018 was the first year where I was like, no, we can actually do this. People are actually listening. People are actually engaging in a conversation about politics, the thing that they tell you your whole life you can't talk about. And so when I think about it, and leading up to that election, I was like, I need to do something to help others that are not going to be in that same position. So what I did was, instead of working in Austin, because I do live in Austin, I decided to help Claire Barnett in San Antonio. Because I was like, Bexar County is where it needs to be. It's the largest metropolitan area that could have some push and has seats that haven't been flipped yet. And so being in Bexar County and actually talking to voters and knocking on doors and working with folks like Gene Ortiz-Jones, who was running in that same area, Steve Kling, who's running for state senate, and then of course getting Beto events sprinkled in here and there. I was like, no, this is this is what we've been talking about for a long time. It's the first time candidates were actually playing nice and not accepting defeat as the writing on the wall. They were no longer sacrificial lambs. They were actual people with actual goals and actual dreams to represent Texas in the way it deserves. And I think that attitude, regardless of how close we got that night, has carried into where we are right now in 2020. Because of those conversations and those first-time voters who were engaged, things seem possible, and now people are not casting off Texas. Like, I never thought I would see a day where I got a map of Texas being a toss-up state before Election Day in my lifetime. Like, no matter what happens, win or lose, like, to me, that's an unfathomable fact, and it all happened because we didn't necessarily start the work in 2018, but we sure as hell got really close to the point where we became a focal point in our country for the work that happened in 2018.
Yeah, very well said. Joe, 2018 was your first election, correct?
It was.
That was it.
Wild. So it was a good one to get involved in. So I like I had mentioned earlier, I had always been really interested in politics. My mom was our county chair when I was a kid, when Obama was running in 2008. And so I had always been around, had kind of seen the party and seen certain things, and was always fascinated by it. But 2018 was really the first time I ever got involved and pushed myself to get involved. And like a lot of kids, what really did it for me was the Parkland shooting. After the Parkland shooting, I wasn't in a March for Our Lives group, but, at our pretty small high school, we decided to lead a walkout, which, I didn't know this at the time, but the administration at my school had asked all of the teachers to report the names of all the students who walked out because we were all going to get in trouble. What happened was not one teacher reported a student's name. They had our backs. And to see that and to see, adults, support young people and their voices, and that was really the first time I felt like that had ever happened, was incredible, and was just even that small little push that helped me want to get involved. Now, to talk again about the person who's really just kind of the fifth person on the call tonight, I guess, is Kim Olson. At the Texas Democratic Party state convention in 2018, I didn't attend, but I snuck in through the kitchen to the Texas Young Democrats after party, which everyone here, other than probably Zoe, were at. I didn't know who any of you were, but it's funny because a lot of my friends now, who I talked to, were all at that party at different times, and none of us knew who we were. But I kind of just, broke in, and I'd heard about Kim a little bit because, she had known my mom. They were both from Mineral Wells, or Miserable Smells, as we call them in Weatherford. It's a rivalry. It's a whole thing. But I went up to her, her campaign manager, Colby Monig, and, I scored an internship. And, being able to work with someone like him, I met Jen. First time I had ever met Jen was at on brand for someone like Kim. And so we, working with Kim and going around the state to certain events and, seeing things and meeting all sorts of candidates, meeting people like Julie Oliver, who has become a dear friend now as she's fighting in TX25, all sorts of folks. Just really was the boost that I needed that started me on the path that I'm on. And we'll always be grateful to Kim for giving me that opportunity, that kid who broke into an after party without a wristband. And we'll always be thankful to a lot of other adults that year, like my teachers, who had my back and believed in me. And so, that was a big year for me.
Yeah, I would say that was the other big thing of 2018 was just the sheer number of folks like Jen and Joe. I mean, I forever to this day will say the best functions and the best folks I love being around are our young Dems. That's just it.
I was in Harris County in 2018, so unfortunately I missed a lot of y'all's interactions. Joe, as a UDem and as the president of the Texas College Dems, What has mobilization been like? What has outreach been like to college age folks
Oh boy.
for this 2020 cycle?
It's been going. We're trying our best. Obviously, there's a lot of institutional challenges that are there inherently, and each campus is a little different. Obviously, it's a lot easier to place like Austin, where UDEMS has been an established chapter since the 1950s, and has all of the benefits of all the political figures, all of the support in the community that other chapters don't. Places like Abilene Christian, shout out to someone doing the Lord's work, Mackenzie McPherson, who's my chief of staff, also who's the president out there. They have to have a Bible study on campus to stay legitimate as a student organization. So there's a lot of those institutional roadblocks that occur, just judging by different place. But at the same time, the pandemic has made things incredibly challenging, like everywhere. But like all organizers, we found our ways to adapt, right? We raised money so, that we could get items like voter registration, door hangers that were little voter reg cards that were on a door hanger. And we were able to send that off to a bunch of our chapters so they can get those on people's dorms, right? And get those in student housing complexes. So students just bringing it to them so, they could just sign them off and put them in the mail and get registered, right? Doing whatever we can, reaching people online, doing a lot of relational organizing, which is the buzzword of the day in the campaign world. But we have been, things as small as, just getting a group of students together. Like we did this the other night with both Wendy's campaign and Julie's campaign, because UT is obviously gerrymandered into two separate districts. But, we sat down with a spreadsheet full of people who lived in both precincts, or all three precincts in the UT area. And we just went through, oh, I know that person. I'm going to be responsible for turning them out, right? Oh, I know that person. When a student or when a younger person hears, and is being pushed to go out to the polls by someone who's their friend or someone that they know, they're way more likely to do it, right? And then ideally trying to vote triple and trying to get them to vote triple in kind of a pyramid scheme of voter contact, if you will, right? Just reaching out to as many people as we can. So a lot of it is that relational aspect and leveraging our personal relationships. Tip O'Neill said all politics is local. I think that's in general a lie, but when it comes to student organizing, absolutely not. It's all local. Secondly, we've had to face other hurdles, because of the pandemic, and because there's no infrastructure really supporting student organizing. One thing that we did in West Campus that I was very proud of, and it took several months, is build up a list of contacts of people who were either politically active students or friends of mine, or different buildings where I happen to know a code or how to get in for unrelated reasons. But compiling all that information so that we could have a way to get into West Campus apartment buildings and launching volunteers into those buildings to drop off those voter registration door hangers, right? To put on little sticky notes that have information about dates and times you can vote, a number to the hotline, sticking in lit dropping for our candidates. We know these students are progressives. We know these students are Democrats. We just got to get them registered and got to get them out to the polls. And, what we're seeing finally is a youth quake in this state. I brought up some stats earlier in this call, right? So many young people are voting. So many of those are college age students. And a lot of that effort, goes back to, a lot of different students and folks across our campuses and our chapters who've made that possible. I think Zoe just disappeared from the call.
Uh-oh.
Well, I hope he comes back.
That'd be nice if he would come back. But in the meantime, I guess Jen, you could probably speak a lot about youth activism and stuff going on these days.
Yeah, no, I think when it comes to youth organizing, what I say will drive me nuts is this misconception that young people don't care. We care. We absolutely 100% care. Zoe's internet connection is out according to the comments. I guess we will just roll with the punches. But yeah, no, young people do care. I hear he's coming right back. There we go.
Woo! I tossed it off to Jen.
Talking about you as well. Sorry.
I am so sorry, but I'm glad that not everyone was lost. Jen, had you already started speaking?
I was trying to get to the conversation of organizing and how
Correct.
everyone assumes that young people don't care. They want to catch us in the stereotype that millennials are self-entitled or Gen Z is full of themselves, and that's not the case at all. We genuinely care about those around us, and we want to see better, but we've never experienced a world without war. We've never experienced a world without a housing crisis. We've never experienced a world where your decision to follow a career is determined by what zip code you live in. And that's kind of the reality that we face. And that's what determines a lot of our decisions and how we interact. So when it comes to relational organizing, I guess to me, it's nothing new. The concept of talking to your friends and making these decisions is something that's really prevalent in several minority cultures. Like, for example, with Latinos, you do things through word of mouth. Nobody has a Facebook page. Nobody has a Yelp page. It's the, hey, who cuts your lawn? Give me their number so I can call them. Like, we really rely on each other as a community to figure out how to get things done, whether it's someone cutting your grass or what candidates to vote for, or, you know, which church is the one in your community. Like, that's how we interact. And that's kind of the model I've always used as a young person. Just, I have never wanted to make an example of my age. And that's just because that's the way I was raised. My mom told me, it doesn't matter how old you are. If you're 6, 16, or 60, you have as much right to be in a room and you have as much purpose in this world as somebody else, but always treat others with respect. And that's the way that I've navigated through life. And likewise, I've always empowered others around me. So even though I'm not old, and I'm going to say that before I get into any trouble, like, I'm not old, but I also recognize that there are others who are younger than me. So rather than judge them for being younger, it's like, no, you pick them up and you help them come along. Because if you're not picking up someone from right behind you, then what are you really doing? It's all about empowering folks and building a longer table instead of a higher pedestal.
Cool. Very well said. Yeah, I think we're all very young at heart. Joy, I'm not sure if you had gone yet, but what has mobilization looked like for you, and you know, just Texas Dems in general, this cycle?
Yeah, I'll come to something specific. I'll pick up on something that Jen said, and this is, you know, the question I always ask, and we asked in 2018 is how do you mobilize those who have become completely disaffected? How do you mobilize the African American community during GOTV? And I don't mean general processes. How do you very specifically increase Black voter turnout? And in 2018, as candidates, we were asked this as statewide, and what we were doing then very specifically to mobilize. And we were asked that repeatedly. And, you know, you see the tactics and the field tactics that people were doing, and you have to wonder how effective some of those are in moving very specific populations of people, especially those who do, as Jen has described, work by word of mouth, what a friend, family, or neighbor very specifically says. That's who they trust, or they trust first. There's some circles there, right? And you know, it's been interesting watching African American communities, different African American communities across this state during this cycle, having this conversation amongst ourselves and Black groups, Black forums, Black spaces, and watching people try to convince, which I had not seen before in public forums, telling others, you need to go vote for X, and if you don't, you're stupid, bad, or horrible. For either any candidate. And that has been incredibly surprising to see, that people must be, I don't know if that's a result of social media or information from texts and SMS, folks doing hustle, or where they're getting this information and knowledge and boldness to be able to just go out and say, why aren't you voting? You need to vote for X, you need to vote for Y, or whatever the issue, topic, or candidate is. And that has been great to see. It seems like maybe we have broken through in GOTV efforts into Black tables, Black homes, Black households, and Black spaces, and not just sort of talk about and use the generic activities, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
I would love to co-sign with Joy in that if there's anything you all can stop doing, or if anybody has this bad habit, please stop telling minority voters, vote for X or vote for Y, and stop voting for a person, or else you're voting against your interests. That does not work, and that is the easiest way to disconnect a disenfranchised voter. Our communities will listen to our values. We'll talk about what affects us locally, what affects us as people. And so in order to get to community homes at kitchen tables, you really need to talk about what makes a person tick and who they are. But telling them, or telling anybody, just if you don't vote for this person, you're going against your interest. No, you will immediately disconnect a person and they will never pay attention to you ever again.
Yeah, very well said. So we're getting closer to time. So I'm gonna combine the last two questions, and we'll start off with Joe. What are your predictions for election night in less than 6 days? In terms of whether it be, will Dems win the Texas House? Will Texas go blue? Anything of that sort. And what's next for Texas going into 2022, where we will have a governor's race in 2024 when Cruz will be up for reelect, right? So what are your predictions and what's next for Texas?
Sure. Oh boy, I think the only one that I could say with a certain degree of certainty, and again, I grew up a Cubs fan. I am a superstitious person. I'm not going to try and say anything, jinx anything. But I would say that, as far as the state goes, as far as, the vice president's performance here, I think it's going to be razor thin. I don't know who's going to come out on top between him and the president. I'm hoping that we pull it off, and I think it's very well possible that we do pull it off. But, even if the vice president comes within 1 or 3 points of winning, that's going to lift so many of our candidates up who are down ballot, right? Folks like Krista Castaneda, who I know Jen is working for, running to be one of our railroad commissioners. Folks like Amy Clark Meacham, running to be our Chief Justice. Gisela Triana, our slate of badass Texas women running in these judicial races, as well as, folks running for Congress, right? Folks running in the Texas House. As far as the Texas House goes, I can say with some certainty that I think that it's going to flip, and I'm very, very excited to see what's happening. Especially, it's looking like we're hitting all the high water marks and all the places that we need to hit them, and so it's going to be a really interesting session if that happens. And I think that, again, with a flip Texas House, with, Biden coming within 1 to 3 points of pulling it off, we're going to see an incredible slate of people running for office in 2022 statewide. That's going to empower people who didn't think it was possible. It's going to make national donors and people across the country who view Texas as a red state or as just a flyover state to pop in and get money and get out. It's going to make them want to invest in, we're going to have the tools necessary to beat people like Greg Abbott, finally, to beat people like Dan Patrick, to beat people like our wonderful indicted Attorney General, who is probably going to go to prison very soon, Ken Paxton. 24, same boat, when we have that presidential level turnout and we need someone to run against Cruz. Even if we cut it close this election, we will have won in the long term, in that, Texas Democrats will be more energized than ever to come back and win.
Cool. Joy, same question.
Was that Joy or Jen? Joy.
Joy, you. Yeah.
I agree wholeheartedly with Joe. I would bring out those same names that he's absolutely brought out. I would bring out our appellate judges as well. I think you're going to see some of those folks get seats, not just the ladies in our Supreme Court, who are all fantastic. I'll go out on a limb and give the plus sign to Krista Castaneda for railroad commissioner. I think that may be the first step in our statewide conversation. Krista's amazingly brilliant and fantastic, and folks are seeing her. She would be first in a statewide conversation. But to your point, I think we're gonna have to have the energy we need to come back as at statewide level to do what we're going to need to do. I think you're going to see not just our continued judicial march from 2018. I think, again, I agree completely about the House. In our cities where you've got a great folks running in, say, even in Travis County for our county judge and some other particular races, our county attorneys and district attorney races. I think you're going to see some good things there. I still think we're going to have a good night and we're going to have the energy to go forward. I know where folks are feeling tired, but I would tell Texas Democrats, we are on a train. We don't get to be tired. We're going to come back again after a census, and we're going to see some redistricting, and we're going to go right back out and have to think about capturing those new districts or those modified district spaces. So we're not done.
Cool. Thank you. And Jen, to close us out, same questions that Joe and Joe had.
I will echo what my colleagues are saying. So disclaimer, I do work for Krista Castaneda, so very excited to see how that's going. We outraised our opponent, and the fact that there is no incumbent in this race sets us up for this unique opportunity to take a statewide seat. The Republican nominee actually outdid the incumbent. So again, anything is possible on election night. But I will add the caveat that I think not only will we flip the Texas House, I think that this will be the year that we finally elect our first female Speaker of the House. My money is on Symphonia Thompson. So Speaker T, we are manifesting it into existence. I believe if Symphonia is elected to be Speaker of the House, she would not only be the first African American to be Speaker of the House, she'd be the first woman, and in turn be the first actually the second Black woman, because Barbara Jordan was the first Black governor.
Correct. Yeah. I think it's going to be exciting. And I would be remiss if I not bring up my own congressional race here. My guy, Mike Siegel in Texas 10.
Yes.
Needs to be the next congressman from the state of Texas. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be an interesting night. I think, whether it's Texas 10 or 25 or 21, I mean, there's too many to say. Whether it's House races or it's judicial races or it's a railroad race, it's going to be a good night. That's my prediction. I'm not going to say anything else. But thank you so much, Joy, Jen, and Joe. Apologize for my technical difficulties. My Wi-Fi died on me. But this was a really, really fun conversation, and just getting you three are so bright and so passionate and so good at what you do. And I, even though Joe, you're much younger than me, I look up to the work that you do, and it's really inspiring. And thank you guys for this conversation. Hopefully, we'll all celebrate virtually on election night, and hopefully, once we get right through this pandemic, we'll be able to come together and continue to work hard for Texans. So thank you guys, and have a great rest of your night.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.